And a very good morning to you. This is Be the Voice for Science and Spirituality. Today in this video, I will be sharing downloaded and channeled information that is merging or bridging science and spirituality together. We'll be talking about the understanding of how science and spirituality are linked. I'll be showing the lens on both sides through the science and through an aspect of spirituality. We'll be talking about what the different dimensions are, what is this ascension process, 3D, 4D, 5D, how certain people can have certain abilities or see different realities, and explain through frequency how that is even possible, how we can raise or lower our vibration, how our vibration is constantly being lowered or raised depending on the frequency that is around us. We'll be talking a little bit about meditation, twin flames, yes, and more. This will be the first foundational video of a series of videos where I will go more into detail into these subjects and other subjects through the lens of merging or bridging science and spirituality together. So first off, I wanted to mention the importance of science itself. Science has been doing amazing things in the medical field, physics field, and technology field, and it's been incredible and very helpful to humanity. But still, there are a lot of gaps. There are a lot of gaps and missing information that's not linking it all together. And a lot in the science field, we notice that many scientists like to, make up some information so that there are no gaps, pretending that there are no gaps in the theories, right? And in the spirituality community, we have a lot of amazing healing devices, technology coming out as well. And again, there's still gaps and missing information within those understandings and theories. So through the information that I receive, when we merge and bridge science and spirituality together, we will see that they perfectly interlock with each other. The missing information in the one can be explained through the other, and only through the merging of science and spirituality will we be able to take the first steps to a theory of everything. So in science, quantum physics and string theory has been doing amazing work, and still there are a lot of gaps even in those theories. What I have understood that when we start to merge those two concepts together, plus certain spiritual concepts together into one, that will be the first step towards the understanding and realization of a theory of everything. A theory that can explain everything with no gaps and no missing information, where everything is linked. And in such a theory, it doesn't matter where you start or what you look at in that theory, because everything is linked. So from one starting point, you could explain everything else. Okay? So, we want to explain this information, and to explain it, we need to start at a starting point. We've chosen to start at the starting point of an atom because most people know what an atom is, and it is an easier way to explain frequency and all these different things that we're wanting to relate to you. So let's have a look at it. So an atom. We know that an atom is the building block of everything that is, right? Everything that is around us is made up of a bunch of atoms. And atoms are always vibrating, they're always moving, they are always emitting certain frequency. So what we have here is a bunch of atoms in the form of a pen. right? And what we have here is a bunch of atoms that are vibrating at a certain frequency that is a whiteboard eraser. And when I look at this, we have a bunch of atoms put together, which makes up my phone, right? Everything is made out of atoms. So when we look a little bit closer at the atom, no, actually let's start by mentioning that atom is a small particle, a small building block of everything that is. Now, if we go and magnify ourselves and look even deeper into what the building blocks of an atom is, we will find smaller and smaller particles. In fact, scientists keep on coming up with a new smaller particle that they have found, and we will see that the amount of smaller particles and smaller levels of building blocks that there are is an infinite amount. And the same as there is an infinite amount of smaller building blocks than the atom, there is an infinite amount of larger building blocks than the atom. We know our universe is infinite. It is the micro from the macrocosmos, so above as so below. And we can understand this when we look at an atom. In fact, just to share, if you have seen some of the old paintings or stone structures, there are actually pictations of atoms in ancient times. This is and was very common knowledge, even before we had a microscope. So let's get started at looking at the atom. So we know that the atom is always moving in frequency and vibrating, right? We have the nucleus, inside core, so to say, of the atom, which is made out of protons and neutrons. Yes, and around this nucleus, we have electrons orbiting around this nucleus. Okay? So if we look at the atom, this is the whole atom, we may notice that there is a lot of space. Because this is all space. We just have these electrons orbiting around, and there is a lot of empty space within the structure of this atom. That's really interesting. So really what an atom is made out of is not only electrons, protons and neutrons, but it is also made out of a lot of space. When I say space, it's density that we do not perceive fully yet, do not fully understand what it is. It's not just empty, there's just a lot of space, and we are not being able to read that information. In fact, most of the atom is comprised out of space. So most of what we see in an atom is actually this, blank information that we still haven't unlocked, don't have the key to fully unlock it. That is what mostly an atom is made out of. So in fact, to give you a number, all of this space is nearly 100% of the atom. Actually, what we see here, the electrons, protons, and neutrons, is only 0.00000000001% of what makes a full atom. That's nearly nothing, right? So this means that everything that we don't see, everything that we cannot see from an atom is 0.99999999999%. 0.999. That's nearly 100% of the atom is that we cannot see. We don't know what it is. It's made out of this space that we cannot fully perceive. So, knowing these numbers and that fact is, if we look around, basically, we are hardly perceiving any of our reality. If I have this pen here, I'm only perceiving 0,901% of what is really in front of me. The other 0.9999, etc. Part of this whole pen, I cannot perceive it. I cannot get that information right now. Not with the vibration that I'm at, not through the lens that I'm looking at right now in this density. That's pretty major. So knowing these numbers, that all of our existence, all of reality right now is only 0.901% of what is. That's pretty wild. So I find it very humbling, this fact, because, we've done so much research and so much experimentation and so many books and theories have been written about things, but we hardly know or see or perceive much of what there is around us. So maybe we don't know much. Maybe we don't have all the answers. Maybe it would be beneficial for us to have an open mind, not believe everything, question everything, find our own truth, but have an open mind to maybe think that there's more information out there that we cannot even start to begin to perceive or grasp yet, because we obviously don't know much of anything. And this is just the totality. This number is just the totality of our reality around us that we can perceive. So imagine us as an individual, me as an individual. I don't know how to make a rocket. I can't name every material that there is on the planet. I can't identify every insect that exists. I can tell you the molecular compound of, iron or something. I have no idea. So as an individual, imagine how tiny the percentage is of what we understand, of what we can perceive. Humbling, right? We're like cavemans, just thinking we know everything, but actually we are nearly 0.999999999% in the dark. We're totally in the dark. It's like we're in a dark room with a bunch of space with the tiniest little light, and we think we know everything that's in the room. Right? I love this fact. I love this because it's just so humbling, and I find it like, so let's just open our mind a little bit. Okay, so what I wanted to mention here, so now we know that electrons and the nucleus together, they make up 0.00090, right? 1% of the whole atom, and thus the space is 10 of makes up the space of the atom, right? So if we add these together, that equals an atom, and that equals everything that we see. Now, if we take an atom, it's a building block, right? If we have a bunch of atoms together in the form of a cell, that is the building block of my body, right? And a bunch of cells together happen to make up me, myself, and this body. But really my body is made out of a bunch of cells, which is made out of a bunch of atoms, which is made out of a bunch of smaller particles, right? See how we have the micro to the macrocosmos? See how everything is made out of atoms, and we can look at it from a larger scale or smaller scale. Me as a person, I am, if you will, the atom or the cell or the building block of humanity. All of humanity is made out of all of us, individual humans, together, the building blocks of what makes the whole, the group, the whole of humanity. If you will, all of humanity and plants and living beings are the cells or the building blocks of nature, of the Earth, of the planet Earth. That is what the planet Earth is made out of. And if you want to look a little bit larger even, planet Earth and all the planets make up are the building blocks or the cells of, this solar system, and thus also of this universe. Our universe is a building block or the cell of the multiverse, and we can go larger and larger. Okay? So, let's have a look at the next thing I want to talk about is frequency. So, let's pretend that this, in between this space, this range of frequency is our reality. Everything that we can perceive, everything that we know, that we see, that we can perceive and understand, lives between this line and this line, okay? This is our reality. And I'm just using numbers here to give us a bit more of a visualization. So let's say the frequency of our reality, because so everything that is moving, everything that exists, is made out of frequency, and the frequency range of everything that exists, of all these atoms that the small percentage of what we are perceiving, is vibrating between a frequency range of 30 and 40, okay? So the 0.0000001 all exists in this plane between the 30 and 40 frequency range. Now, if I was to tell you that a pen has a certain frequency. In fact, all pens have a certain frequency range, yes, that they are vibrating on. That's what makes them look like pens. Kind of like when we've seen one pen, we've kind of seen them all, because a pen has a certain frequency range it resides in, which makes it a pen, which we perceive as this pen, right? We know that these are all different types of pens. So all of these pens have a different frequency, a different exact frequency within the frequency range of what is the frequency range of a pen, if you will. Does that make sense? And pens can be very different. So we could see that this thick pen compared to this smaller pen, they have a lot of difference. It's very different than, for example, these two pens. They look very similar. So we can see that the frequency of these two pens are closer together than the frequency of these two pens, right? Does that make sense? For example, if we had these two pens, they are the same pen but different colors, so they vibrate at a very similar frequency, but they're still slightly different. Thus, they look different. Now, imagine if I had exactly the same pen and the exact same color. So let's pretend these are two black pens. They are exactly the same color. They came from the same factory, and they were brought to me today. Are they vibrating at the same frequency? No, because each pen will be uniquely different, down to such a small frequency we may not even notice, even if they look so unique. Perhaps the print is slightly to the left or to the right by a millimeter, or perhaps one of these pens just fell or got bumped somewhere, so that there's a little indentation. So this pen is actually, a microgram lighter than the other pen. Each pen has still its uniqueness, even though it may look identical to us. If we relate this to human beings, we are also all unique, right? We all are vibrating on a frequency of humanity. If we are lucky, we all have one head and 2 arms and 2 legs, and we are humans. Thus, we vibrate on the frequency of humans. But within the humans, we have many different colors and sizes of humans. You know, blonde hair, brown eyes, different aspects. And those people vibrate at a closer frequency to each other. But it's not only the physical. We would have to look at the physical, the mental and spiritual part of a being and see how they vibrate on those different aspects, because our vehicle may look very different, but I may have the same frequency resonance, my spirit, my mind, my way of thinking, my understanding, as someone else who looks totally different to me, but on a spirit or soul level, we vibrate at a very close frequency together, so we can understand each other. This is why, you quickly like someone or dislike someone, because if your frequency is not really matching another person's frequency on a body, mind, and soul level, if they're not, if they're very far apart, it's hard to understand each other because there's a lot of space, right, in between. So it's going to take a lot more effort to be able to find some common ground frequency to understand each other. And this is why sometimes we meet someone of the same either body, mind, and soul, or all levels, and we can quickly understand them, engage, and they quickly become our best friend. This is because our frequency, the frequency that we're vibrating at, is not very different from theirs. Does that make sense? So like and like attract. This is how that works. So we all know that we can call in certain people, or certain people are magnetically attracted to each other because they vibrate in a similar frequency range or similar frequency number, and thus they are pulled together. You could compare it to how high air pressure goes to low air pressure, and it just goes there without knowing it. It's attracted to that. And this is how this also happens. We can see like, we vibrate at the same frequency and we have something to share because our frequency isn't identical, right? This frequency has some information that this frequency doesn't have. This person doesn't have, or this person doesn't have. So often we are magnetically pulled together to exchange information, and thus during the exchange of information, we harmonize our frequency. And if you could see it as high air pressure to low air pressure, it kind of evens itself out, it balances itself out, it's pulled there. And once we have shared the frequency, we have harmonized our frequency and shared what we needed to, there may be other people that we are attracted to afterwards because there is balancing or information to be shared with, which is through frequency. So we are pulled away from this union because the work has been done. The exchange has been done, the frequency has been harmonized, if you will, and now we're attracted to where we can carry on our path or being useful, because we're always moving forward in cycles, right? If we kept on just hanging out with this person, but we've shared everything we needed to, everything is done, it's not being very purposeful anymore. It's just being stagnant, right? Anything that is stagnant is not moving forward. Life is always cycling forward, moving forward in vibration, and once we are stagnant, it is equal to decay, to death. So we move forward. So you see, when we meet people and friends or boyfriends, etc., and suddenly we don't talk to them that much, or we kind of split ways. That's absolutely natural. And once we get rid of the humanoid story about taking it personal, and we understand that it's all got to do with frequency and magnetic pulls, we can take that story away from it and be like, oh, we shared what we needed to, and now I really need to be here to, grow and understand and share with another, and that person needs to as well. Right? If we could all understand that a little closer, I think a lot of people will be less butthurt. Excuse my French. So, frequencies. So the reality that we live in, everything that we perceive, we're going to say that it is in between the 30 and 40 frequency range. So we could say that a pen vibrates at a frequency, I'm just pulling something out, of 30.1. Yes? A thicker pen that nearly looks the same might be vibrating at the frequency of 30.123. Okay? Now, an umbrella might be vibrating at the frequency of 31.45. We could say a book at 34.01. Human being at 36.7, etc. So everything that we perceive here vibrates between this 30 and 40 range at their own certain frequency. Things that look similar or are more similar will have a closer frequency range, right? Yes. So when people are talking about the third dimension, we're going to call this reality of everything we perceive the third dimension, the third density. Meaning that the levels underneath this is the second density or second dimension, and the frequency range is between 20 and 30. Below that we have the first dimension, a frequency range between 10 and 20. Yes, and then up here we have the fourth dimension and the fifth dimension, and it goes up. So fourth dimension between 40 and 50, and fifth between 50 and 60. Now, we may know that, actually let me just put it this way first. We know how a radio works. When we are tuning in to a certain frequency, let's say station 90.9, we are able to perceive that station, that music, that information, correct? All the other music stations, they are still broadcasting, they are still emitting their frequency, but we are not tuned into that frequency range, so they seem like they do not exist in our reality. But once we tune into a different frequency, station 101, we suddenly perceive that information and not the previous information that we did. We suddenly perceive that frequency, right, by tuning into it. So this is the same as these dimensions. All these dimensions live and exist on top of each other. They are constantly living, vibrating, and emitting frequency. But we have only been tuned into, we're only tuned into this 30 to 40 frequency range. And thus everything we perceive is on this radio station, if you will. Yeah? So, if we were able to change our frequency into lower or higher frequencies, we would suddenly be able to perceive lower or higher information or vibration or frequency or realities. We would suddenly be able to perceive different realities. Now, for the people who perceive different worlds, who can see beyond this 30 to 40% frequency range, people who can see energies, who see auras, who see past timelines, future timelines, who can see different beings, or see sacred geometry, or see sound and and space, all of this. How do they do that? How come they can do that? Well, I'd like to explain that. Some people are born with that ability in this dimension. Some people go through certain experiences that opens them up to different frequencies, and others have done a lot of self-work and heightened or lifted their own frequency vibration to be able to do such things. As well, sometimes our environment or what happens around us, which is basically our experience, may be at a very high vibration, and we will have lifted our vibration to match that vibration. We'll talk a little bit about that more later. So, for example, let's say this is a person who lives in the third dimension. Okay, let's actually give him a head and not a cross. Hello, little person who lives in the third dimension. Now, he can tune into all these frequencies, but he happens to also be able to tune into frequency 40.1. 40.1. Let's just say that. What does that mean? Is that he can perceive all this reality and this reality as well. Right? Let's say he actually now suddenly he can perceive more than that. He can perceive 40.26 and 55.9. So this person has been tuned into the third density vibration, and he can tune into these different frequencies, and thus he can retrieve the information that is stored there, and thus he can see those realities, right? Now, some people have that happening constantly. They're just constantly linked to multiple dimensions or multiple frequencies at the same time. So as that person lives in the third dimension, he or she can see different frequencies, different realities, while still mostly being based here. Now, others can put themselves into a certain state of being. When we raise our frequency through, for example, ceremony and meditation and breath work, we can tune into these different frequencies. So some people may only live in the third dimension, notice this, and once they raise their vibration, they are able to tune into different frequencies. Or they always are aware of these multiple dimensions, these different frequencies, constantly, but when they raise their vibration, they can perceive more. They see more of a reality, right? Okay, so let's have a look. So there are other people who come here and they have a higher range of frequencies. So this person can tune into certain different frequencies. Now, some people can tune their range into the 32 all the way up to, let's say, 55 frequency range. So everything that lays here in between, they can either tune into more magnifying when raising their vibration, or they are constantly aware. Some of the great masters are constantly, utterly aware of everything that is happening all the time in this larger frequency range. This is how people, can perceive or know things about other people or other information, or know the name of someone's mother that they've never met before, and all of these things, because they're tuned into a lot more information constantly. Okay? So, let's have a look. So we, as a person, once we start raising our vibration, we are able to tune into more different frequencies, thus different dimensions. Thus we can perceive and understand things on a more multi-dimensional level. Yes? How do we raise our vibration? Well, I talked a little bit about it through meditation, breath work, and all of these things, but there's a lot that raises our vibration. What happens with vibration. I want to talk about that a little bit. So, for example, we have the sun and the planets, they orbit around the sun. Why is that? Because the sun is humongous, it has a great gravity pull, and thus we are pulled towards this frequency, if you will, this large body of frequency, and it kind of tunes us all these different planets, into this frequency. We may not be the biggest body and the most powerful emitter of that frequency, but we all hold a very similar frequency because we are magnetically pulled to that frequency. Does that make sense? Just like the same as laughter is contagious, right? Because laughter is a very high frequency, and when someone is laughing or smiling, when we see someone at that frequency, it's very contagious because it's a higher frequency that we're residing on, and thus we are pulled towards that frequency and we take it on. It's the same as that saying that people say about, you are who your friends are, something like that. If we are hanging out with a bunch of crooks and criminals and people who are not very honest, we can easily become that same vibration, because that's the vibration we are constantly resonating in, right? We may be a bundle of light and we can hold that frequency for a while, but if we don't have a place where we can be in the same or higher frequency where we can recharge that frequency, when we are in lower frequency or lower environment, a lower octave constantly, our frequency will start to match that same frequency that is around us in our environment, which can be also through people, things, and much more, right? So it's very beneficial for us to have our surroundings, everything that we see and perceive, match the frequency we're at and have a higher frequency. Match our frequency because that would be harmonious. We want higher frequency because we would like to raise our frequency to a higher vibration. So we have, if you wish, a challenge to raise our vibration to match higher frequencies. People could call it, challenging ourselves. Many people say, I always got better because I challenged myself in, let's say, in sports and running with stronger and better athletes. Thus, I could get better that way. Yeah, because you're challenged, because you're put in contact with a higher frequency, and now you want to connect and match that frequency. Does that make sense? So everything that exists is constantly emitting a certain frequency. Everything that's in the third dimension is constantly emitting the frequency between the 30 and 40 frequency range of that dimension. If we want to raise our frequency into higher dimensions and perceive and understand more, what do we need to do? Not be in lower vibration all the time, lower frequencies that are pulling us into this reality. If I am constantly surrounded by a 40 to 50 range of frequency, my vibration will start to rise, whether you're doing this consciously or unconsciously. Obviously, consciously, it'll go quicker and faster. Your consciousness will raise, and if I'm always vibrating at that frequency, that 40 to 50 range will start to become my reality. Does that make sense? If I suddenly start vibrating at a frequency between 40 and 50, not anymore 30 and 40, I suddenly do not perceive this radio station, this frequency anymore. I suddenly perceive this next reality, because that is the reality that I'm vibrating on and matching. Does that make sense? This is how you can ascend into different dimensions, into different realities. This is also kind of the key of how teletransportation works, and multi-dimensional jumping and time jumping and all of those things. But we'll talk about that in a different video. Okay, now some people as we said, have a range of frequencies. So let's say this person has a range of 30 to 50 now because he has been raising his frequency, but he's still jumping between these dimensions because sometimes he is hanging out at this lower frequency and sometimes at the 40 and sometimes at the 50. So his reality, what he is perceiving, the different things that he's perceiving in his mind's eye or with his real eyes, keeps on changing a lot. This is what's happening to a lot of us right now. This is why we are having certain ascension symptoms, whether we are conscious or unconscious of this change. So as we are still moving, slowly merging to a higher density, we are still having this little yo-yo effect. And can be very confusing, it can be frightening, it can be really uncomfortable on a physical level, mental and spiritual level. So maybe you want to ask, how come a lot of us are going through this change? It's got to do with multiple things. There is the polar shifts. It's got to do with certain cycles, like the yugas or the great years, and there are other cycles within cycles. Everything in this reality is cycles within cycles or out of cycles. It's also got to do with some astrological events. It's also got to do with our collective consciousness has been raising, collective consciousness. Got to do with a lot more different aspects, in fact. This is because of all these different things that are occurring, that are changing the frequency around us. It is affecting us, okay? So even if we look at planet Earth, the vibration or the frequency of the whole planet itself, the Schumann frequency, that's the frequency of that the Earth vibrates on, is changing at this moment in time. Why is it changing? Because it is starting to vibrate on a different frequency. Now, remember what I mentioned before, that we are the cells or the building blocks of the planet Earth, right? The planet Earth has a greater mass, it has a larger amount of frequency. Thus, anything that is smaller will naturally try to match this bigger frequency, right? Like the sun and the planets orbiting. So, as planet Earth is changing frequency, as the collective consciousness as well, that is, living on a different plane, the collective consciousness is changing a frequency, it is affecting everybody, whether we are conscious of it or not. It is affecting everything around us. And everything around us is going to start matching this higher frequency. Does that make sense? Okay? So why is the frequency of the Earth changing? Again, this has got to do with astrology, polarity shifts, and certain cycles that are going on. We'll talk about that most likely more in a different video. So, when people are talking about the shift, when people are talking about the event, when people are talking about that we are, raising in vibration and having these different abilities, it's because of all of these things that are setting that off, if you will, right? And we're feeling the domino effect of it. Yeah. Okay, so from here, so let's have a look where I want to bring you guys now. Yes. When people are talking about the shift, about the raising of consciousness, about the ascension process we are going through, it is the ascension process of the third dimension. That's where we've been living in this frequency range. and we are moving, shifting, matching, and we are dancing and evening out the fourth dimension. Remember when I spoke when you meet a similar but different dimension or frequency, like a different person, you're going to start to match that frequency or harmonize that frequency. When that energy happens, and it can happen in many different ways, that energy usually looks like an infinity sign. So it looks like this. So right now we are starting to raise our consciousness. We're starting to be aware of the fourth dimension. This is why all these different abilities are coming up in people. People are changing because we're starting to be aware of these higher frequencies. We're not there because we've been most of our lives or all our lives in this third dimension, and suddenly we are perceiving new things. So as this process is working out, as we are harmonizing and balancing and understanding this next dimension, this is what's happening. This infinity sign, this connecting. At some point in time, there will be a balance point between the third and the fourth, right? This will create a still point, or also known as 0 point, or a creation point between these two densities. When that happens, we are able to fully co-create and manifest and make our own reality, which is connected to the fifth dimension. So from this still point of creation, as a collective, we will be able to fully shift into the fifth dimension. Okay? So let's take a little bit more understanding of the third, fourth, and fifth dimension. The third dimension is connected to, let's make some space, to the masculine, to linear way of thinking, structure, the conscious mind, to science, and to much more. Body, to the physical plane, material, etc. Okay? The fourth dimension is connected to the feminine. Not linear, wave-like cycles, wave-like structure, flow, to our unconscious mind. To spirituality, to our spirit, to our mind, and to the non-physical, okay, other planes. So the third dimension is more dense, if you will. The fourth dimension is more of the astral plane, of the non-dense, of energies, all of that. Now, I did write something important here. So the third density is about our conscious mind. Feminine is unconscious mind. Now, our conscious mind is that lives here constantly in the third dimension. Our unconscious mind is connected to our higher self, ourselves on different dimensions. It is connected to our spirituality. It is connected to our phobias. It is connected to our creativity. It is connected to the collective consciousness. That's all in the unconscious mind. So what is beneficial for us if we want to start raising our vibration, heading towards a fourth dimension, and balancing out the feminine and the masculine, flow and linear, structure and consciousness, science and spirituality. If we want to find the balance point between these, right, we're going to have to interlock them. And one of the key things is connecting our conscious mind with our unconscious mind. Science and spirituality. we're doing any of all of these things within ourselves and within the world, there we go, within the world, we will see we are connecting the third and the fourth dimension together, right? Once we are all on board, once we have reached a certain point in time, we will be able to all collectively raise our vibration to the fifth dimension. We can only do this together. We can only do it when the masculine and the feminine work together, when all generations work together, when all colors work together, when we fully understand that the reality we live in is dualistic, and only by the connecting and transcending that duality can we raise up, ascend to the next dimension or understandings or truths, right? It's really beautiful that way, only by fully working together, because every frequency, every person, you know, a person is a bundle of frequency or bundle of atoms, has certain and different information, and only when all that information is interconnected and locked into each other can we understand everything. Does that make sense? So what else do I want to talk about raising vibration? So yeah, in this fourth density, a lot of abilities or what people are starting to feel that are starting to open up is like telepathy or cognitive knowing or premonitions, visions, seeing energy, all of these different things. And again, while we're in this ascension process, in this balancing process, it can be really uncomfortable. I have another video mentioning all of the comforts we may be going through, or some of them. I will post a link on the bottom of this video, so you can look at that. Yes, so again, if we're conscious or unconscious about this change, it is still happening. The more conscious we are about it, the easier it is for us to navigate and understand what's going on a body, mind, and soul level. Again, everything is connected. So as we are changing our frequency within, the frequency around us, our surroundings, the earth, the universe, the multiverse is also changing. We are not separate from everything, right? So we can see that a lot of us are releasing, we are purging, we are letting go of a lot of things, a lot of stuff we have been holding inside, a lot of things we have not been confronting most of our lives because it is our shadow or our darkness and we've been hiding it away. And now all of that is coming up to be faced and to be purged and let go of. As we are doing this inside, it is happening within our cities, in our communities, in our tribes, with our family and friends. Not only that, it is happening within the planet Earth. You can see that right now, volcanoes, earthquakes, etc., and more will come. Of that will come in this future time. No, it's not the apocalypse. It is purging. It is beautiful, and it's part of it. So know that as we are purging inside, our reality is reflecting what we are doing. So don't worry about those things. Know that it's great. And right now in the world stage, we have been noticing that a lot of let's say stuff that's been swept under the carpet is starting to come out. A lot of truths, a lot of governmental structures, hospitals, education system, a lot of the lies are coming to light. Everything that we have been shoving under the carpet and not wanting to deal with, all the shadow side, has been swept under the carpet. So it's a beautiful time right now because, so to say, before there is light, there has to be darkness. And right now we're dealing with all the dust that we've been hiding. So a lot of people, have a lot to say about Trump and a lot of other political stuff that's going out on the world stage. Now, personally, I don't watch the news because I choose not to surround myself with those lower frequencies that are emitting constant fear, anxiety, and worry. I only want to raise my frequency, so I decide not to indulge in those frequencies. But everything that is happening, I appreciate it a lot, because without this disturbance, without Trump doing what he's doing, a lot of people would still be sleeping. If we had another Obama and everything was just coasting, no one would be questioning themselves. No one would be saying, hey, there's something wrong going on over here. We live in a physical plane. And a lot of people need to see something physical happening in front of their eyes to understand. And since Trump has been, so to say, throwing all the dust under the carpet out in the air, people are starting to question themselves, question what's right, what's wrong, what's right for the earth, and other things. So I find this a beautiful and magnificent time that I have personally been waiting for a very, very long time, that people are starting to realize that the truth may not be what they always thought it was, that people are starting to question themselves, are to finally question everything that is and find their own truth within. So this is a very beautiful and exciting time. Okay? Don't buy into the fear, anxiety about all of this darkness coming up, because it is the purging. It's a beautiful release, right? And we all know when we want to achieve something, we have to go through uncomfortableness to achieve that. Look at a yoga pose. A certain yoga pose that's really hard for you, you had to sit in that uncomfortable asana for a long period of time, and after you went through that uncomfortableness, suddenly it was easy, and you can do it all the time. It's the same. Okay, so let's see what else I wanted to hit on in this. Oh yeah. So this diagram is the ascension trinity. It is, I'll speak about this more. This is a Trinity blueprint that I've received from Sirius that we can overlap in most or all science and spiritual matters. I will talk about this in another video in more detail, okay? And just quickly, so I have my infinity signs here saying that there are an infinite amount of other dimensions lower, infinite amount of other dimensions higher, and within each dimension is as well an infinite amount of dimensions, and within each frequency even more, because we live in a fractal dimension. But anyway, that's not so important right now at this moment in time. So what else did we want to hit on? Yes, the matrix. So what people refer to as the matrix, we are talking about the third dimension, this dimension, between the 30 and 40 range. So, matrix. So we know everything in this dimension is constantly emitting a certain frequency, and if we are surrounded by lower frequencies than ourselves, or just low frequencies in general, we will start to match those frequencies. So if we are constantly surrounded by the frequencies of stress, anger, fear, worry, negativity, etc., if we're constantly surrounded by that, what's going to happen? We have nowhere to raise our vibration, or we don't do anything to raise our vibration, we are going to start to match these vibrations. Everything is constantly emitting frequency. The news is pumping a frequency of fear and worry constantly. The internet is full of truth and full of lies. And certain things are constantly feeding into our stress, our anger, our worry frequency. Movies, certain horror movies about death and crime, emitting certain frequencies. Songs about killing each other and depression and all of this, emitting certain frequencies. And then we start to match those frequencies. A whole society, a whole city is constantly being pumped through the TV, the newspapers. Just a newspaper itself holds a frequency. the songs, the noises, the not being able to connect to our earth because we're constantly on cement and we cannot even touch the planet, which is emitting a certain frequency where we can match and heal from that frequency. So this is all keeping us disconnected, and it's all keeping us in a certain frequency range, a low frequency range. So how can we take the power back? How can we raise our own vibration? By choosing not to play this game, by choosing not to allow such frequencies to be around us constantly, and by doing certain things or changes in our lives, practices that raises our vibration. Once we raise our vibration strongly, lower vibrations cannot pull us down because our vibration is higher, bigger, right? If we raise our vibration to the size of the sun, all these smaller planets that are emitting vibrations of fear and anger, they cannot harm us because we are the bigger vibration. Does that make sense? So I'd like to do another video about that. So basically everything in your home that you have in your home, to the clothes you wear, the products you buy, the things you put on your skin, by the people that are around you, by the job that you have, by the air and water and food that you breathe, everything is constantly emitting frequency. And if we have all of those things in a lower frequency, what is it going to do? Lower our frequency range. And if we have something that matches our frequency or higher, then we will start to raise it. Okay, again, with meditation and breath work and different things, we can practice to raise and strengthen our frequency, our light body, our Merkaba, etc. Okay, yes, we will do a whole video on just that. And what things we can do. Alright, what else did we want to mention in this video? Let's have a look. So we know of, we've all heard of stories of people seeing demons and haunted houses. We may know of people who constantly have to deal with such lower vibrational realities, if you will. That is because whatever is going on with them, they sometimes drop into lower frequencies or just constantly are living in that lower frequency. Thus, wherever you are always vibrating in, that frequency becomes your reality, right? So that becomes their reality. So let's say those people are vibrating in a 20.45 frequency. This means they are perceiving different realities, lower realities, where such lower vibration entities, or which is just a bunch of atoms vibrating at a lower frequency that makes up an entity or a thing or a person, but thus people can perceive that. These are, poltergeists, haunted houses, all of these different things. So if this is your reality, if you are dealing with these things, it means you need to raise your vibration. Okay? These things cannot touch us or cannot harm us whatsoever if we are not vibrating in that vibration. If we are living in higher vibration, these things cannot have any effect on us, right? Does that make sense? That we are not tuning into that radio station. The same as the matrix. If we decide to not tune into that vibration, if we decide to raise our vibration into a higher vibration, everything that the matrix is pumping into us, that reality of fear, worry, stress, never having enough, competition, scared that we will not survive, we start to raise our, if we start to raise our vibration, this cannot become our reality anymore. In higher reality, there is abundance. Abundance of life, of love, of knowledge, of wisdom, of food, of homes, of everything. This is where we can manifest, where we can create, right? There's a lot more I want to talk about in 3, 4, and 5 deep. Enough for this video right now. Let's have a look. Just a short little thing about timelines. So each dimension has different timelines that are coexisting at the same time. Really, there is no past and present. Past and future, there's only present. I do have a video, I'll put the link on it below, about different timelines and the merging of timelines, what's happening now. So each dimension has multiple timelines or sub-dimensions, if you will, living on top of each other in the same place. And all of these dimensions are constantly on top of each other, living in the same place. Yes. So some of us can jump timelines, so we perceive different times, ancient Egypt, maybe different planets, or total different alternate realities. All of these realities are constantly existing. It just depends what frequency we are tuning into, right? All right, just one more quick thing about meditation and meditation. Prayer, ceremony, being fully conscious and aware, ritual, what are all of those things? It is bringing we'll use the Trinity, our body, mind or spirit, and soul, that's together into one place in time. So once we bring our body, mind or spirit, and soul. Okay, so when we're meditating, we are connecting our conscious and unconscious mind together, right? Our feminine and masculine together, all these things we spoke about earlier. So once we are connecting on a body and mind or spirit sense, once when we're connecting on a body, mind, and spirit, and we're connecting those things, we are able to get to a 0 point, a creation point, and from that place we are able to manifest and create and have our intentions or our wishes or our prayers come true, and that's in the soul level. So let me explain that a little better. If we are conscious of all our levels of our being, our body, mind, and soul, which is connected to our third dimension, fourth dimension, and fifth dimensional self. When we come into meditation, all these things, what are we doing? We're bringing all of our awareness, all of our consciousness into one place and time, right? When we're meditating, when we're in ritual, we are aware of our body. We may be in this asana or a different type of asanas, but we're quite well aware of what we're doing with our physical body. That's emitting a frequency, right? Every asana in yoga emits a certain frequency. We'll talk about that sometime as well. But once we are doing that on a body and physical level, which also includes words, singing, song, prayer, right? Because that's on the physical level. When we bring our body, mind, and spirit, our conscious mind to it, so when we are singing, when we are praying, when we are using our conscious mind in this moment and being totally present with our physical self, and then bringing the soul and spiritual self to that, our whole consciousness, awareness are together in one point in time, creating this still point of creation. This is how we can manifest. This is the place where we can actually ask for our reality to come true, because we're connecting to that. I hope this makes sense. There's a lot more to this, but I feel that is for a different video. I just wanted to touch on that very quickly. And then, yes, I think this is all for this video. I hope this is enlightening. I hope this makes sense for you. If there are any questions, please leave it in the comments, and I will be making a new video soon. Thank you guys so much for being with me. Have a beautiful day, full of smiles, full of growth and realization, and see you next time.